else's. Hey there. I was supposed to get on at 4, and I got a little caught up there. I'm sorry about that. Let's see if I can bring y'all in a little bit more. I'm sitting in a different spot today because I need more light. I've had a super long day of things going on. All right. I think you're coming on, Steve. There you are.
There I am.
Are.
How you doing?
Are you?
It's been a long day.
I think it must be something in the water because today has been crazy balls.
Yeah, I mean,
Crazy balls.
it's like that for everybody. We're all
I
feeling it
know.
on different planes.
I don't know what's happening. I've been on calls literally since 8 o'clock this morning.
Okay.
Hello, y'all. Thank y'all for coming in.
Oh, hey, Hilda, how you doing?
I guess we'll give folks a moment or two while I take some deep breaths. And I am literally like call, like all day. And haven't had a lot of breathing time.
All right.
So.
Well, you want to do that right now before we start?
Hey, say less. Let's do it. I'm ready.
Yeah,
Ready.
take a minute. Let's get like some, couple deep breaths in there. Get you back centered.
My back centered. Yeah.
We are where we at, right? So
Not
no need to rush.
exactly where we are. Hey, y'all. Thank you for joining. Hey. My daughter Jessica texted me a couple of minutes ago. She's like, "Where are you and Steve?" I'm online. I don't see you. I'm like, "Girl, I'm coming." Getting it together.
You want to get to it, or
Let's do it. I say
okay.
let's do it. Let's do it for sure. Why don't you kick us off, Steve? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to come along for the ride. I'm going to adjust my lighting while you... Oh, I don't even need the light. It's better.
Well, we've had a few conversations, and it always leads back to like parenting and then certain commonalities that we see like in different relationships, and who's supposed to do what, how's it supposed to get done, and it always comes back to this idea of co-parenting. I hear it, I experience it, and I have experienced it on different levels, and I just think that when we talk about it in front of other people, it's all for show. It's full of shit, right? Because we're trying to tell the world that we have this perfect parenting style, and all parenting should be done like this. And if it isn't, then something's wrong with your family dynamic. But every family is not the same. Every situation is not the same. Everyone doesn't have the same parenting style. So why are we continuously trying to adopt this specific ideal of how we should be developing children, not raising them, but developing them, right? Like some people believe that, kids are to be seen and not heard, right? Others are, they should have the most leniency as far as growth possible, right? And then some people are in the middle. So how are we able to not only define what co-parenting looks like, what it is, but also how it's going to impact both of the parents and the children? Because the most important thing is you're developing this little person to be an independent being.
That's right.
But we're so caught up in the relationship or lack of relationship of the parenting that we forget that the important part are the kids.
That's right.
So now we're here and talking about co-parenting.
That's right. Thank you for the intro. That was Steve giving the intro, church sock poppy, which I just love to say because it's like such a fun thing to say. So we've been, so I'm really excited for us to have this conversation. As Steve said, we have been having a conversation that has surrounded this idea of developing human beings and what that actually looks like and how important a role that is. And so we were like, you know what? We're definitely going to do something around this soon. More to come on that. But for right now, what we thought was, let's hop on here. Let's have a real conversation about this issue of parenting beyond the kind of politically correct, or like you said, Steve, the, I'm the perfect parent kind of thing. Like, let's have a real talk, because we both believe that a lot of folks could benefit from this, because it's almost like the bullshit that people are facing and going through that nobody really wants to talk about, because parents can sometimes really tie themselves personally to the journey. And there's this idea that if I don't have, the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the dog and the cat, and if, me and the person that I made these children with, if we're not like smiling at each other 24/7, or God forbid you're not together, that somehow or another it equates to failure, or that you're less of a parent. And so that was really, some of what we were bouncing back and forth, and some of what we wanted to kind of debunk and have this conversation about. So Steve Sims is this incredible human being who is we actually had a longer conversation, or a conversation on my podcast a couple of months ago. And tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
This is always the toughest question to answer, right? Because you're never really just the same person, yeah. I guess. The best way to put it is I just help people be not better versions of themselves, but reconnect with who they truly are, redefine their own identity, well, redefine their identity, but reconnect with who they truly are to be able to be themselves. Because everyone has this mask. We've always worn it forever, and we're always constantly, we're developing who we are, or waiting for the moment to show the world who we truly are behind this mask, right? We want the moment to take it off, but there's always the fear of being accepted for who I am, right? Like with men, there's usually, you have to live up to a certain ideal or idea of what it is to be a man. And if any part of you shows a chink in the armor, then, you know what I'm saying? Then you're not, yeah, exactly my point. So, but being a man and being masculine and all that is multifaceted. Just being a human being is multifaceted. And I just want people to accept that, live that. Like, you can fully be who you are at all levels and be comfortable doing it. You don't have to just stick to this ideal of this is who I have to be accepted. Like, fuck all that, pardon me, right? Like, that just old way of seeing the world is done. And I just wish people would step more into being proud of who they are and how they live life and how the world meets them.
Absolutely. I think, so let's talk a little bit about, so in that kind of like that acceptance of yourself and working your way toward feeling fully comfortable with telling the world who you are, and telling yourself, getting clear about who you are with yourself, can also come this role that then you wind up with, this role as a parent. And I think a lot of folks are discovering themselves as they're having this parallel journey of, raising the human that they created or adopted or wound up, caring for. And then there's the relationship with the person that they made the decision to do that with. And I think that's the sticky part, because there's like these three lanes happening at the same time, where we're both expecting excellence from ourselves and expecting excellence from that person that you're partnering with, while also trying to kind of unravel and unpack your own kind of journey.
So I'll I'll use myself as an example.
Let's
Like,
do that. Let's
right,
use you
so
as an example.
when my daughter was born, I just turned 26. Right, I was married 25. Daughter born was 26. I don't know shit about being a parent, right? I only know what you like. First off, the first time you become a parent, you learn one quick lesson that your parents didn't know what they were doing either, right? Because the hospital gives you this blanket they give everyone in a book on how to be a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone learns how to be a parent the moment they become a
Right.
parent. Like, it does, I don't care what you say. Like, that experience is you always constantly evolving on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning how to do it while it's happening. So imagine you're young, right? You have a relationship with somebody, your dynamic changes, and then you introduce a baby into that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the second lesson from that is, well, that I got from my relationship changed with my daughter's mom because we're now parents.
That's right.
I
It's a
my
whole different
focus
ball
right,
game.
my focus was less about me and less about the relationship and more about how do I show up as this parent and this father for this little girl. And that impacted my relationship without me really noticing at the time because I'm not focused on anything other than just being dad.
Mm-hmm.
But you learn real fast how one thing impacts another thing impacts another thing.
Mm-hmm.
My lack of communication and understanding for what it meant to be a parent and my singular focus impacted my relationship, which impacted my ability to be a father because we end up separating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now that dynamic changes. So now I have to the one thing that has changed my view on the world is now being taken away from me in a sense. So now I have to navigate that, then navigate this different idea of a relationship, and then
Mm-hmm.
how that's going to impact my ability to be a father. And then you have the normal fears of what if somebody else comes in and tries to replace me and all that. This is shit we don't want to say out loud, right?
Right.
Like that was at one point that was my biggest fear. Like, she's young. What if she forgets who I am? What if she forgets about dad, right? Because I'm not going to be there all the time and somebody else might be there, right? So that was like a constant fight. That was a constant fight, a fight with myself and then a fight in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
As that changed, I had to take a step back and be like, okay, well, if this is what it's going to be for the next however many years, how do I become a better parent and a better co-parent, right?
So this was at the point where you and your daughter's mom had now separated.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to add real quick while we're telling the story. What we want to do is really bring this conversation to the surface. There's a lot of conversation about baby daddies, baby mamas, how it works, coming together. There's a lot of finger pointing both ways. And if you have any questions, if you have an issue, if there's something that you'd love for us to bounce back and forth and help you to unpack, please put it into the comments because we'd love to talk about it. What we're really looking to do is to take this thing that we know is surfacing on the bottom and bring it up front so that we can actually talk about it in community with each other. So, you don't have to use names and all that, but if there is something going on, or if you know of a friend who's going through the baby mama, baby daddy, the things that are happening, let them know that we're having this conversation because we really want to have this be a meaningful piece of information for folks. So now you and your
X.
yeah, are now, it's like, okay, now we're co-parenting. What does that mean?
And no, that's not. See, so this is where a lot of frustration always creeps in. And I can understand how it impacts young men and women, right? Like, so what we think co-parenting is it just sounds like co-parent. Oh, two people working together to raise a child, right? Or develop a child. But what it often turns into is possessive. It becomes possessive because a lot of the relationship issues are not healed through the relationship. They're reintroduced through the parenting. Oh, so you don't agree with this, you don't want to do with this, then you can't see your kid, right? like, or you can't have time, you can't speak to, right? You can't be able to connect with your child because my my needs that involve just you and me aren't being met the way I want them to. So it's going to impact your ability to connect with our child,
Mm-hmm.
right? We take possession. It becomes the verb, even how we speak. Oh, this is my child. This is my son. This is my daughter. No, this is our child, our
From
son.
birth.
Yeah, right.
From birth,
Not
whether
just
you're with the
because.
person or not, this is not, and I'm going to say it, and only I can say it, because if you say it, they're going to tear your ass up. So I'm going to say it, okay? Women, I'm just going to say it, okay? What I see a lot of times is we have these children, and yes, we carry these children, we push them out, or they get cut out, or whatever it is, okay? We have these children, and what I see happening is we start this separation from their birth when we go into this role saying, this is my child because I carry the child, okay? And it's what it does is it sets up this separation. It's like the father's there, but the father's a little further away. And I understand how we feel so connected to this human being that was in our bodies and that came through us and came into the world. But there are two people who are involved here. And so I think that conversation, even that language, like you just said, Steve, about, my child, this is my child. This child is not a possession. This child is someone who really, ideally, needs to have the input and contribution of both parents, of both genders.
Yeah.
So,
And that's where I see a lot of the frustration with these, like both men and women. Like women's needs aren't being met, men's needs aren't being met, but all we want to highlight is, oh, this person ain't shit, this person ain't shit, because they're not doing X, Y, and Z.
mm-hmm.
Versus, how do we find that middle ground? Because the more than likely the issues are stemming from, again, that personal
That's
relationship
right.
or lack of that personal relationship. Or if I feel like you wronged me during the time we were together, I may always harbor that and hold that over your head for the life of this relationship of this child. Like at some point, you got to either have that talk or you just got to, pocket that shit and put it away because it's not helping anyone. It's not going to help. It's not going to help that relationship. It's not going to help developing the baby. It's not going to help anything. And then you often carry like that anger and that frustration into new relationships. So when you start to add those new dynamics of, okay, she's with someone and I'm with someone, right? Like these are people who weren't there from jump. They may not be here tomorrow, but while they're here, they now become a part of this storyline,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now you got to navigate that because you don't know what one person's telling the other. So when, excuse me, when we're talking about co-parenting, just as the parents alone, we always say this and take it how you take it. Like you need some type of mediation, therapy, talk therapy, some kind of counseling service between just the parents, so they can be more aware of one another's points of views, but then have someone who can control the communication or direct traffic. Because again, you angry at me for me leaving my socks under the coffee table after work, and you're gonna give me hell for that for the next like however many years. Like how is that productive to this relationship? Like we always say 18 years, right? Like, are you gonna be mad for 18 years? Are you gonna hold on to this for 18 years? Or can we find a resolve so we can help this baby be a better person?
I think also that sometimes this idea of resolve, life is a journey and things aren't always resolvable, especially if there's pain and hurt or betrayal or anger, in the relationship. And I think that putting the condition of resolve on in the way of two people being able to focus on their child and the needs of the child is setting you up for failure, because we may not be able to resolve the issues that we have with each other, and we have this human being that is looking to us and is soaking up everything that's happening in the environment around them. And so this is the harder thing to do. And I think it's really important to understand that your relationship with each other is completely separate and apart from what your child needs and what's in the best interest of your child. Sometimes you just have to be like, you know what, I'm so mad at this MFer or her or whatever. Like, if you know, all right, what are we going to do for this kid? And you really have to be able to, if that child is going to get the healthiest support, you really have to be able to kind of put your big, your big girl panties on, your big boy panties on, and drawers, whatever got there. Sorry. Listen, man, I've been going to bed o'clock this morning. I need some grace up in here.
Hey, it's all good. I
And
mean,
I got an IG live right after this one that I'll tell y'all about later. This is a day for me.
It's different times, different times. Everybody, you know what I mean? If it's
whatever, right? But I think it's really important to understand that. And I think that's really key, because so often that is the issue that's happening. It's like it's a distraction, right? My child needs to be cared for. My child needs the equal 100% contribution of both parents, even if you can't do it in the same household. But as long as you're keenly aware of how important that role of parent is, you can say, you know what, I'm gonna cuss your ass out later, or there's some things we need to resolve, but we can't stop the world. This kid cannot wait for us to resolve all of our myriad issues before you can get back to that child. I think there has to be some consistency in the way that parenting role is approached with that child.
And that doesn't happen. I mean, I say it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen as often, or if it does, it's not being highlighted enough.
Right.
Right. Because we're always, like, again, when you see co-parenting or hear about it, you only hear about the very pretty things or how it's working, or like I'll take, and I don't want to use this example, but you look at like Will Smith and his ex, and then, his current wife, and how they navigate that. And I always hear people talking about goals, 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 right? And in my head, I'm just like, you don't know the pain it took to be able to do that, right? They're not talking about that part. And when they do talk about it, they kind of brush over it, like, oh yeah, and it becomes like an inside joke. But that is rough. That takes years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are people prepared to go through that for the value of a healthy relationship, for the child's benefit, right? Like, and a lot of times it's always uneven, because you'll have one parent that's just trying and trying and trying, and the other may not notice it, right? To no fault of their own, to no fault of their own, right? Because people can only be where they are when they're there, and you just have to be able to navigate that, understand that eventually it'll click on their time, and then this dynamic will get better. But for the most part, it gets frustrating, right? And it feels like it's gonna be forever, but then one day you look back and you're happy that that person was consistent, right? Or you were consistent, because then now you're where you're at, and then now you can have those conversations, like, oh yeah, like, hey, what's going on with you? The communication opens up, right? You build trust, not on the relationship becomes a new relationship, because it's not about you and I, it's about, hey, how are you in terms of what you need, and what do you need personally, and then what do you need in terms of resources to be able to continue being what you like. Oh, do you need time? All right, how do we navigate that, right? Or let me take the grunt of it. All right, like, if our child was with you for this long, then let me do that, so now you can have time to kind of rediscover yourself, or be able to go out and do things without having to think about, babysitter situation, school, all this other stuff.
Like, that's really like teamwork, which is like really what the real definition of co-parenting is around. I see I am 6. You said co-parenting when you live in different states is your situation. And I can imagine that is, that can be challenging.
Yeah.
You mentioned that she can be very possessive. Um, and I can, I don't know the specifics of, your situation, but I can understand that that can be challenging. Steve, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I've experienced this. That's why I was reading it. I was like, yeah, literally, we live on opposite coasts, right? And because of my time in the military, I was always gone.
Hmm.
So that, sometimes I'm in the States, sometimes I'm not, right? And that makes it even difficult. But it's very possessive, even with the littlest things. Like if I'm over here, hey, hi, how are things going? What do you need? Like, how is she? Like, do you notice any changes in behavior? And then it's always first the language of, my child, my child, and then, oh, you're not doing X, Y, and Z, when you're kind of not really in a position to, based on the distance alone, just the distance
Hmm.
alone, it's not like I'm gone because I want to be away. I'm gone because of my current circumstances, right? But I'm also doing my best to navigate that and still be a, you know, very present parent, right? Like my most difficult thing was like, how do I still be present? Well, there's this big distance between us, right?
Right.
And I've
You're
lived
not
overseas,
there every single second in
right?
person. Yeah.
Like I lived overseas. One idea that I did was like, I created an email address for her, right? But she doesn't know, but if she's watching, she knows now, right? And every day I'd write her a note
Hmm.
or a letter, or tell her about my day, as if she was there in real time, right? And then when I get opportunities to, I would FaceTime her as often, or send her videos, or send her voice notes. I still do, right? But that's only because I wanted to get to the point where I'm always a thought. I'm always present. She knows that she's the first and last thought of my day, and it's evident by that communication, right?
Hmm.
To the point where she gets annoyed, but I'd rather her be annoyed that I'm reaching out versus not hearing from me at all,
You know
right?
what
Like,
I love about that, Steve? There are so many people that I hear who really exist in a kind of a victim state,
mhm.
like, oh, I don't have the relationship that I want to have with my child because of her. And I'm not talking about you, I am
No,
six.
no, no.
No, I'm talking about
Oh,
I
okay, all
am
right.
six, whatever that is. Like, I'm not talking about you at all. But there are a lot of folks who really take on this, like, I'm doing this because you did that. I'm being, possessive because he is doing this. Or I don't have the relationship I want to have with my child because she's standing in the way. And what I love about what you're suggesting and what you did yourself and modeled for other people is taking the responsibility for making sure that you have a relationship with your daughter where you are narrowing that physical distance by mitigating that physical distance by as much as you possibly can
Mhm.
so that you found a way to make sure that your daughter knows that her dad thinks about her. So there's no question for her. And there are some people who live in the house with their children and they don't, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
how do you know that your parent is thinking about you? They have to tell you, they have to show you.
Hmm.
You have to feel that. You have to know that. That's not
Yeah.
something that you can turn around 10 years from now and say, girl, I was thinking about you every day, you know?
And they're trying to figure out
They're
how. Like, yeah,
like,
so
they're like, you're a liar, even if it's true,
yeah.
right? And so I think that, things are not always ideal. And this whole thing, we're talking about hearts and emotions and egos and unresolved issues and resolved issues, but trouble with people kind of communicating with each other. And all in that, within that, is this human being who's relying
Hmm.
upon these two people to get their shit together enough to be able to give that child what they need.
And that's funny because it like AM6, IM6, right? So like even with the possessiveness, right? There was a time, and no fault again, no fault to her own, because this is where we were. We're just kids, right? Kids as parents is how I see it, right? There was a time where like she was making it difficult for me to speak to our child, rightfully so, because she, whatever her situation is, that's how she's viewing the world, and I had to understand that as I got older, but I didn't allow it to like stop me, right? So what she didn't know is, for years, like, um, I would like my daughter and I, we had like this consistent talk. Like we scheduled time to see each other, FaceTime, all of this, right? And it wasn't up until like recently that her mom realized, like, she's like, oh, like, I just think you guys should see each other more. We had this talking, and she goes, I was talking to her about seeing you more, and she told me, like, y'all been talking for years. Like, y'all scheduled FaceTime calls and phone calls, and y'all would have like basically distant dates, right? Where I'd call or she'd call me, and we would like do stuff together. Like, we'd play video games together, or if
Mm-hmm.
she's doing arts and craft, I would just sit there and watch her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't physically be there, but I'll give her the feeling of
Your
me physically
presence.
being there. Right, right. I can't be there, but I'm gonna be there, right? And when her mom found out, she's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I was like, "If I told you, would you have figured out a way to interfere?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "So why would I do that?" But she also said, "I'm glad you did that
Mm-hmm.
because, yeah, I never have to ask you to be a part of her life. You made it a point that you're not letting anything stop you, right?" And this was just me being stubborn and petty against her, which helped me develop, right? Like, my stubbornness and my pettiness against her and all her stuff made me become like this very like intrusive parent, right?
You used
So
it for good.
yeah, yeah. So I had to thank her for doing that because it forced me to be creative as a
Yeah,
dad, right? So there's always in every problem there's a solution, right?
that's right.
So while you're trying to figure out what, and you're looking at all the circumstances that are against you, you could say, yeah, this is in the way, but how can I go around it? How can I go through it? How can I go under it, right? Maybe that there's a door there and it looks locked. Did you twist the knob? It might be
Right.
open,
Do
right?
you
You just
even
gotta,
know the clock?
yeah, like you just see, oh, or maybe you tried three doors, all of them are locked. The fourth one, you just try to turn the knobs. Turn the fucking knob.
Yeah.
See what's there, right? Like, find ways to use your circumstances to work in your benefit for the relationship of your child. Because what we do is we tend to model what we see as parents. That's usually like, I mean, I get it, but you can take what you've experienced, but you can use that to create the experience you want, right? Like, you are not your parents or your grandparents, right? So you don't have to take their model of what parenting is and child development is. Like, you can say, oh, this worked, this didn't work because you didn't fucking talk to me like forever, right? Add something else, right? The other side to it is, every day is a new day as a parent.
That's right.
Every day.
For the
So
people in the back, the
so
people in the back, okay?
this may work today. It's no guarantee it's going to work
That's
tomorrow.
right.
Or this may work with child A. It's not going to work with child B and C, right?
That's right.
Each one is a different personality, a different spirit, a different energy, and you have to be able to give them what they need and they require at different times, right?
And
So
what I love about that, and for you all who are just joining, I'm talking to Steve Sims, our church sock poppy. We're talking about, this bug is trying to get in the conversation. We're talking about co-parenting and what that looks like and how to actually get through some of the challenges and obstacles that stand in the way whenever there are two human beings who either are not getting along and are together, or two human beings who are not together anymore, who are trying to figure out how to keep that child as the central focus for all the good stuff. And so that's what we're talking about right now. I love what you said about create, because it really is about, parenting is really about being creative. And I think what happens also a lot of times is there are two human beings who stand in the doorway of all the experiences that they witnessed or that got, programmed into them. And then they're coming in and they're trying to try that out in a new situation with a brand new person. And
yeah.
so the challenge with that is that you can't come, and I think this happens a lot of times, right? It's like people want to be super traditional in a brand new world.
Yeah.
This is not that world. So whatever that formula was that worked in under those circumstances is going to be a completely different situation when you attempt to apply it to these circumstances. I'll give you one that a lot of people argue about. I know when I have been there, right? Where it's like, we're both working full time, bro. You cannot try to have this like ultra traditional where the woman, does all the things and works. And then you're expecting to have, not you, but whoever is expecting to have this like, you know, leave it to beaver lifestyle. It's just not realistic and it's not appropriate for the situation. So I think, and I'm making a joke about it, but I think that your ability and what you're sharing about being creative and really putting some thought and presence into the role and forget about all that. Like, I'm Lisane and I have this child, and who is this child? What do they need? And what can I do that's best for this child? And whatever worked, bring that forward, but actually be mindful about the way that you're parenting this person.
Yeah, it even gets a little trickier when you know, again, the other relationships come in. Let's say you formed this dynamic with your co-parent, right? What happens when they're dating or they get married to someone else? Like, how does that impact the relationship? Not just your relationship as co-parents, because does this person have a say in the decision making, right? And also, how does this person view developing your child?
Right?
Is it going to hinder it? Is it going to help it? Right? Are they going to start downloading some type of bullshit program that y'all not with? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, do you have those conversations? Do we talk about it? Do it like, hey, don't, like, because it gets territorial sometimes.
So what do you suggest? Like, do you suggest, bringing the person and sitting down and having a conversation? Like, how do you suggest the person deal with
I did. That didn't work in my situation.
Okay.
I was like, because so more than anything, that made everything harder. But when I spoke to her mom, and I say this to share, not to demean or even like downplay her. She's been amazing through all of this, right? Again, it's because of her I had to be creative in order to be a better parent, right? So so I thank her for just how she's navigated all this, and even dealing with me at times where I know I've just been unbearable, right? Because I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm perfect. Like
I was actually going to say that in the caption. Like, Steve, thank you for saying, where's Steve's daughter's mother? Because I need you to know how perfect he is.
Remember, three sides to a coin, right? No, so I asked her, I was like, hey, like, are we gonna have this conversation? Or I want to have this conversation. She's like, no. She did everything to make sure that we didn't speak, right? I said, dope. So what's the next thing to do? I spoke to our daughter. I said, hey, I know things are kind of different, but they're still the same. So what are your thoughts? I asked her what her thoughts. Kind of like blew her mind, like, what? I was like, yeah, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think about him? And then how does that affect, us, our relationship? She's like, I got to think about it. I said, don't think about it, right? Kids don't get back to you. So, right? But I legit asked her, and she told me straight up, like, yo, he's good to me, no issues. Like, we hang out, all of this stuff. But dope. I was like, as long as you're not in harm's way, I have no problem. But it was a moment where we had to talk, like, we're talking, and then she thought that I didn't like him. I'd never met this man. I'd seen him in pictures, never met this man. She thought that I hated him. Like, I wanted
Your daughter did, or her mom? Your daughter.
My daughter did. So I was like, where did you get this?
Right? From you.
Right? It's like, I said, why did you think I want to harm? Because we had to talk, and she said, yeah, I want you two to meet. This is my daughter. She's like, I want you two to meet. I said, because, yeah, both are important to me. I said, dope, right? She said, but I don't want you to fight. All right, and in my head, I'm like, yo, you're like 11. Why are you thinking about this, right? But you have to get this from somewhere. Like, why would you think I want to fight this man? Like, no, she didn't want to say it, but I think she hear pieces of conversations and then developed her own idea of what it is. So I had to reassure her, like, yo, whatever is over there, as long as you're not in harm's way, I have no problems with anyone. Like, and as long as it doesn't affect how we connect, I have no issues with anything. So we were kind of secretly planning to meet up, and when, you know, the warden found out that didn't go down, right?
Spoiled. Not happening.
Right? Not happening. Not happening.
Stay away from my man, Steve.
but but I think it was dope that but first I was like, oh well, like it was she was more intrusive in it. Like she was like, yo, like, you know, like these are people that are important in my life. I want them to meet. I want them to get along, because if this is going to be for a while, like everyone should be speaking, right? Because to me it was like, yo, I was like, she's now becoming like the parent in a sense, because she's thinking, how can I keep the peace amongst all these people that are important to me? And I love that about her, because now it's like, oh, she knows that, one, she can use her voice. Mm-hmm. Two, not only can she use it, she's being very clear in how she communicates and telling each and every dynamic in this relationship how she feels, right? So it's all based on who wants to be a part of it. So you like that was like probably like the most impactful moment for me, because then I knew it was like, oh, we're all doing this, like whatever we're doing is working, right? Because she's being vocal, she's like joining the conversation, and she's very aware of everything that's going on. So now we have to be even better at what we're doing and how we're doing it, because she's noticing even more, right?
I think I think that sometimes we as parents try to like keep everything away, and I think that there's an elephant in the room, right? The elephant in the room is that the two parents are not together, and there's this child or couple of children, whatever, right? And I think that putting things on the table and acknowledging, even when there's challenge, right? Like, listen, we're trying to figure out how this whole thing is going to work, because it's a little weird. Like, you know, she's now with this other person, and maybe I'm with, you know, this other person. And I think putting it on the table is a good way of helping to model for our children that as adult people, we have to navigate challenges and obstacles as well, right? And so I think a lot of times it's the how we do things that really winds up helping the child in a way, you know, more than what we say. It's not what we say, it's what we do. It's what they see.
Yeah, the behavior.
Right. And we're not all perfect. Like, we don't know sometimes, especially in that situation, like that's a new thing for, you know, for you or her mother to deal with. Like, how do I navigate having a child and maybe having another relationship and what's going on? And I think that the more that we can, obviously at the age appropriate time, but the more that we can allow our children to not be in it and fixing it, but to be witness on some level to what's going on, you know, the better for them. And I think something else that with this co-parenting thing or the terminology, I think it's important for us to recognize that if we have friends, like we are able to team up with our friends to make things happen. Yeah. There have been times where I have been mad at a friend, right? Or not really feeling a friend, but there was something that we were going to do together. And I think that if we can remember that maybe we don't want to be with that person, but ultimately find the friendship in the relationship, find that little thread that allows us that point where we can communicate with each other and keep each other focused on what's best for that child, the easier it is for the parents and that child to kind of navigate the experience.
And I just, while we're on it, like, I don't know why we call it co-parenting. It's still just fucking
that
parenting.
Seems to bother you. What is it about that?
It's still parenting. Like, it
yes.
Like, you know, it sounds, it just, I don't know, like, maybe I'm just too overly focused on the word. And it's like, because when you take the, like, cooperative parenting, it's still parenting, right? Whether it's singular or
I think
everyone involved.
I can see where you would think that. Yeah, because it kind of takes away from that we're just like, both in here doing this thing.
Right, because then it's like, oh, so then does that mean when it's, is it only co-parenting when we're not a we're not in a relationship anymore, because when, two parents are in the home, isn't it still just parenting? Why isn't that called, why isn't that
That's a good
considered
point.
co-parenting, right?
That's a good
Like,
point.
why do we make the distinction because of what happens to the relationship? Like, it's still parenting. That dad is still a dad, especially if they're involved. That mom is still mom, especially if they're still involved, right? So it's parenting, and how we develop it together and who does what, right, is still important.
Mm-hmm.
But when I say is like, when I think of co-parenting, I go, oh yeah, now I'm bringing grandma and grandpa into the mix, and the aunts and uncles, right? Because it's not their responsibility. It takes a village kind of
That's an
thing.
interesting point. It's funny
Yeah.
because I say co-parenting a lot when I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about my own experience of having, been brought up. And the reason I do it is because me, my sister and brother lived
Mm-hmm.
in our dad's house. And I always add in, but our parents co-parented. And I add that in for clarity, that
Right.
that didn't mean that my mother was absent. It just meant that
That
and I use
they
co-parent,
were not together. Yeah.
right. But that's like that's what my intention is behind it. And so we have 5 minutes
Oh,
because
okay. Yeah.
at 5 o'clock,
You gotta go.
I'm getting on with my sister, and we're going to do a whole JMB King Pleasure LA Instagram
Got
live
it.
at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
I
we
gotta
have like
go
five
back.
minutes.
If y'all haven't gone to the exhibit in LA, please go. It's dope. You learn more about the man than just the artwork.
Yeah.
I think that was like the biggest part to me. It was just like the things that the public don't know that make him who he is. Like, beyond the artwork and the impact in the culture. It's like, oh, like he's just someone's brother. He's just
Yeah.
someone's friend. Like, not
Yeah.
just, but like, you get to see him more humanized than beyond just all the other things. But that's just
Well,
me. It's dope. Go check
we
it
don't
out.
have a lot of time, so let's talk
Yeah.
about this thing here. And if y'all want to hear
Okay.
more about that, get
Okay.
over there to
Jump on that.
jump on that one after this. So Steve, question. And a lot of people, and I know, I feel like, really, because of the time constraint, like, we're just scratching the surface of this. And again, I see so much conversation around that's really focused on the relationship between people, right? There are people talking to women about their relationships with men,
Yeah.
and vice versa, and people talking about all
The
that, and
podcast, right?
all of it, right? And I think that, thank you, Jess. And I think that there is not enough conversation about how do we create healthy parenting relationships in that are in the best, that are created and structured to be in the best interest of the children that are involved in these situations. And so that is the conversation that I'm hoping we can swing back to.
Yeah, let's do another one, and let's
And just
focus on
keep
that part.
talking about this and really focus on that, because it bugs me. Just full disclosure, it bugs the shit out of me. It bugs the shit out of me. There's a certain group, I won't name the name of the group, but it's on a different platform, and it's this group that is like completely about divorce, and like what's happening in that experience of divorce. And I cannot tell you how many times I hear, oh, he wants to spend time with the kid, but I got to watch him and make sure, blah, blah, blah. Or he didn't pay child support, so he can't see his kid. And, or the guy who is like, I'm going to be a bozo because if she's not with me, then I'm not going to support her. And it's really a thing. And it's a thing that we're not talking about a whole lot. There are not a lot of conversations about it. And I would like as many people as possible who are focused on not just venting about this, but on really coming together. Let's get into community and talk about this so that we can solve it, and so we can support those folks who are struggling in those situations. Because at the end of the day, it is our children who are walking around, not knowing what life is like with a father or a mother in the picture. Or it's our children who are out there not able to have healthy relationships with people because they don't know what that looks like, you know, or people who are out there talking about all men are shit or all women are shit, you know, because of the effed up and unhealthy and toxic relationships that they have experienced and witnessed, you know, within the behavioral patterns and cycles of their own lives, of their own families. So if we can get down to this and start having these conversations, I believe that it will translate into healthier relationships, healthier children, you know, children who can really trust that the people around them are doing their work to show up for this parenting thing versus being raggedy about it. You know, I'm just going to say it. Like, that's raggedy. If you're like, that's my child, raggedy. It's raggedy. You can't see your child, or first let's talk about what you did while we were together before you. Nah, get out of the way. Let your children have both parents. Let your don't down talk one parent, you know, the one parent to that child. Don't do
Yeah,
that. Don't do
that's the other
that,
part of it. It's the other
because you're
part of
not
it.
hurt. You're only aggravating that person, and you may be hurting them a little bit, but you're destroying your child's ability to have a healthy relationship with themselves.
Yeah. You know what?
With themselves.
You know what was the most important lesson out of all the other ones that I took from that? When my what changed me and what ended ultimately changed the dynamics of everything for me was I came to the realization that I'm the first um, example of what a man is in my daughter's life, right? And because of that, it fucked my world up because I had to think about like like consciously everything. I had to be more self-aware. I had to, what if I do this? How will it impact this, and how will it impact her? That's how my decisions are made now. If I
That's
do
right.
this now, how will this affect her
That's
tomorrow?
right.
Right? And from seeing the world like that, I knew I had to change. Like all the wild shit I was doing when I was young, like no, I had to be more responsible. I had to like, and it didn't just happen overnight. It was gradual change, right? But because of that, that's what also drove the wanting to have the discussions with her mom, putting up with things that you normally wouldn't put up with, because I don't want her to think that there's any real animosity between her mom and I.
Right.
Right? Like she can see that there's times we don't get along, cool, but she won't hear from me that, oh, you know what? It's because of your mom. Like the only time I'm saying, oh, your mom is, oh, hey, do you want to come out to wherever I'm at? Ask your mom. So she knows that if mom signs off on it, we're all good,
Right.
right? Or I'll ask, do you want me to ask mom? Right.
Right.
So she doesn't have to get in the middle of that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's only those circumstances in our dynamic. Outside of that, like we actually, I mean, we have inside jokes because of our relationship, like my daughter and I, right? But not to the point where she believes that there's ill will towards her mom.
That's human. That's human.
Yeah,
That's a family. That's
yeah,
yeah, that's a family and how a family interacts with each other.
right. But what I see oftentimes, right, and it isn't a bad thing, is the like, slick jabs are just being very blatant with like, yo, I don't fuck with your mom, I don't fuck with your dad, or you're not gonna see me because of this, right? Like I've had my bout of that, right? Like shit don't work.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to grow the fuck up. You gotta be able to weather that storm a little bit longer, especially when it's uncomfortable for you. You don't want to, because it's a part of parenting. It's always there. It just shifts on what it looks like,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Like, but that pushback is always going to be there as a parent,
Absolutely.
especially when you have two people that approach it a different way or have or different lives, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just going to be there. So yeah,
Right. And the how is mom so she knows that you care. I love
yeah.
that.
I was like, yeah. So how's mom? She doesn't want to answer me. Why are you asking me about mom?
Of
Right,
course.
right.
That's a whole thing. That's a whole thing. That Jessica's my daughter.
Yeah,
So we have to come back to talk about all of this, Steve.
yeah. We
Okay.
will.
And we're gonna like level to it, and we're gonna level up to like specifics, like this. Let's talk about this specific problem. how do we resolve that? Or how can we, what communication can we create so that we're coming up with some solutions for folks?
Oh, and if
Okay.
anyone has questions, please feel free to send them or DM either one of us because I'd love to hear any feedback on this conversation.
Absolutely. All right. Steve, I'll talk to you later. I
All
got to
right, talk to
hop.
you later.
They're having
Yeah,
problems logging on, so I got to go.
yeah,
All right,
do your
y'all.
thing.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.